Welcome to Pathways to Greatness, the show where faith meets focus and potential becomes purpose. I'm your host, Jeff Forrester, mental performance coach, speaker, and believer that greatness begins within. Each episode, we'll uncover the biblical principles, mindset strategies, and daily disciplines that help student athletes, parents, and leaders just like you walk boldly in their calling. Let's step onto the path that leads to true greatness, God's way. Hey, welcome back to Pathways to Greatness podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Forrester, and I have a wonderful repeat guest that's on the show today, and it's Freddie Stevenson. So if I go back, he was at the beginning of the year last year. So he's one of my first guests. I had not had that many up until then. And this episode does not disappoint. And since he's a returning guest, I just was really trying to decide, how do I have this conversation? Because as you know, if you've listened to multiple episodes, other than the solo episodes, I always ask the would you rather. I go into what is the definition of Pathways to Greatness podcast. In this one, I just felt compelled just to have a conversation, just to get right in it right away. And the reason for that is Freddie's had so much happen to himself over the last year, from the passing of his father unexpectedly to tremendous growth in his podcast, Trials to Triumph, that you can find on YouTube. And it's just unbelievable. And I wanted to tap into him and get him just to share and reflect. And it was wonderful. I had 0 questions written down. Many times I write some questions and some prompts to have. Everything was just a genuine conversation, minus the names of the guests that he's had on his show, which are big names. And so I highly recommend, and he didn't even come on to promote the podcast. So that was 100% not his desire. I think I kind of took him by surprise when I wanted to share more about the podcast that he has, because it's good. It's enjoyable to watch. The early ones are great. These, again, just like if you go back and you listen to the first handful of mine, they're not as good as they are now, because what happens with repetition is you get better. And then his guests are of more notoriety, but he still has just average everyday guests on the show as well. But that's great to see success. But ultimately, regardless of all that, the wisdom that he shares, just the insight that he has on life and where he's been and what's happened over the last year is fantastic. So without further ado, Freddie Stevenson. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Pathways to Greatness podcast. It's me, Jeff Forrester, and I have a return guest. It's Mr. Freddie Stevenson. Freddie, how are you?
And I'm blessed, man. I appreciate you having me, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing really good. So just as I was telling Freddie right before I hopped on, is I want to do something different today, because normally, I have my questions, my would you rathers, and I go through all of those things. But I want to do something different, because there's been so much that has occurred in your life over the last year. And I've followed along on Instagram, and we've tried to connect, but just you've been extremely busy and I've been busy, and we just haven't been able to just talk. And so I wanted to talk today and just catch up, see how things are.
Yeah, no, man. Everything, life. But with it all, man, it's all a blessing, man. So I know I came on last year, early in the year, for the first time, and we've stayed in touch, and you've been one of the people that's always been in my corner, which is rare in this world to find people that just want to see you win with no strings attached. I won't build you up too much, but he's a solid person, like literally, like for real. And that's coming from somebody that's been, met all different type of people. And I come from a, environment where you're kind of skeptical about trusting, but there's no doubt in my mind that you have a genuine heart, you have a love for people, and you just want to see people win. And my prayer for you before we even get into anything as far as the past years, just God continues to use that gift that you have, because it is a gift. And I'm wired somewhat the same way. So for me, I used to think that it was an issue, because you would always, give, and you see so many people take away from you or take advantage of that gift that you have. But my prayer for you is that God continues to align you with people that only want to use your gift to help you build, to help you grow. Because I'm sure you've seen it, and I'm sure you're experiencing it now. People that only take from you, and you're giving all this stuff, and you're like, oh, yeah, nobody ever wants to return the favor. Not that you're ever looking for that, but it would be nice every now and then as a human, So my prayer for you is that God continues to connect you with people that have a like heart of you, heart for people, and just want to see you win.
Thanks, brother. I do appreciate that, and doing it every day and then hearing that makes it all worthwhile. And like you said, we don't look for it, but it is nice every once in a while when you hear thank you. And I think that's that's a very valuable lesson to the listeners, that for people who are always in your life, there's so much in your life you take them for granted. And I can't remember if it was you or somebody else that talked about as live in a way that other people take you for granted, meaning that you just give so much that they don't even realize how much you give. And just tell people thank you, for those that are in your life, and just like that, Freddie. So I appreciate you and thank you. I received that.
Yes, sir. But yeah, no, the last year has been crazy. I know we came on last year. I came on last year. We talked, and I think a little bit a few months later, that's when my father passed. So, I was going through after I came on the podcast, I got baptized. Regained my life to Christ, got baptized, and that was, the most important decision I made with my life. For me, I grew up in the church, and I was always that person, even though I would say, God is good. And I never truly believed it. I just thought that if I went about everything a certain way, that God would reward me with certain things. And then once I didn't get those rewards, I was like, I'm not doing this God thing anymore. I never really believed in the first place. So over the course of my life, I started to kind of backslide and turn away from God. And when I say God's got me out of some dark situations where my life, my freedom, everything was on the line, the real deal, like miracles. I'm a walking testimony, but gave my life back to Christ, got baptized, and most important decision I could have made with my life. A few months later, my father passed away, and that was kind of, that was a tough situation. I'm still kind of moving through it. Just, anybody that watches this, I don't know if you've lost a parent before, but I think no matter where you're at in your life, whenever someone loses a parent, it's like all of a sudden you feel like a kid again, a child, because no matter how successful you are, no matter how old you are, for a slight moment you're like, yo, what am I gonna do? No matter how my parents, they set me up for success. My father, that's one thing he did. He prepared me to deal with anything, adversity, all these things. But the moment that he left, I was like, dang, what am I gonna do without my pops here? So, that's been an ongoing battle, for me, but also like watching his journey and seeing the things that he's overcome. I'm blessed to have witnessed it for 52 years. Just watching him, the man of God that he's become, turning his life around, being the guy that was in the streets, and then, ultimately leading the church and impacting lives in the community. And I can truly say he was a person that after God's own heart. And I say that because, get a little deeper into it. Being a pastor it isn't easy at all. Being a person in leadership, it isn't easy. You're going to have people that attack you, that want your spot, that lie on you, just because you're not catering to whatever they think they've been called to do. And most of them, they haven't been called to do that stuff, because if you've been called, you can't miss it. God's going to open some door in one way or another. So for me, I think the toughest part of the journey for my pops was not the death in itself, because, you prepare yourself for that. They're going to have to leave at some point. And I think he lived his life to the fullest, and he ultimately fulfilled his purpose. But for me, I think death for me was tough, watching the journey after, because you see a lot of people that he considered friends, or people that he trusted. You find out after he leaves that they never really had good intentions for him. Like people that he called friends were envious of him behind the scenes, wanted his spot. And that was kind of the hard part for me. And, it's been a battle, but I kept hearing God say, man, Freddie, just chill. Like, I got you. because you're gonna want to defend somebody that you love, and even like people that he considered best friends. Like one of his best friends comes out that was one of the people that was hating on him his whole life, and he spent the time after my father's death trying to undermine a lot of things that he's done. But for me, understanding that to be blessed is to be envied. When God has called you, not everybody's gonna like it. A lot of people are gonna ask themselves, why not me? And that's just the reality of the situation. So while we're on this podcast, it's called Pathways to Greatness. A lot of people aren't gonna like when you're on that pathway to greatness. Because for some people, they want to stay where they're at, where it's comfortable, and settle. And when you're challenged, like for example, if you get on a weight loss journey and you go to a cookout, you've been eating all this food your whole entire life. You're like, man, I'm going to be disciplined today. Everybody at the cookout's mad at you because you don't want to eat the food. Oh, you think you're better than us. And that's the same way with, when you're on this journey to greatness. Some people are going to be mad because certain things that you used to do, you don't want to do them anymore because God has called you to go higher. And you're like, hey, I'm giving you the opportunity to roll with me. I really want you to come. Some people don't want to come. And some people don't know what God has allowed you to go through behind the scenes to get there. People watch you right now. They may be looking at you from the outside. And they're like, man, this guy, Jeff, man, he thinks he's this. He thinks he's that. And they don't know your story. They don't know your testimony. And that's really what it is. We all have our own different callings, our own different purposes on this earth. For me, it's important for me. It's important for you to walk in what God has called me to do and focus on my lane. And I think a lot of times in life, people get caught up on watching what somebody else is doing. There's the famous picture of, I think it's Ryan Lochte, him and Michael Phelps. They're swimming in the Olympics, and Phelps is ahead of him, and Lochte is just focusing on Phelps. And Phelps is just focusing on his race, doing what he does. And I'm a firm believer in, winners focus on winning and, losers focus on winners. So when you're on this journey to greatness and you're called to lead, you got to focus on doing the little things. And when you're called to lead, you got to understand that people are going to turn against you. People are going to backbite you, lie on your name, but you still got to do the job that you were called to do. And I think for me, that was one of the most inspirational things, looking back at things with my pops, because he would know people were envious of him. He would know people hated him, and he would still love them. He would still pray for them. And when you're called to that position of leadership, you got to put your pride to the side and understand, I got this mission that I got to accomplish. And there's nobody that did that greater than Jesus. Jesus knew that people was trying to kill him, and he still loved them. Like you in my face right now, I know you finna try to set me up, but I still love you, brother. And if he can do that, man, there's nothing in this world that's too big of an issue for you to overcome. And that's that's my inspiration daily.
Yeah, amen. And he was on the cross, and it's like, hey, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. They're just stupid humans, basically. I'll put words into his mouth. I know he wouldn't say that, but he felt bad for everybody because they just didn't have the strength and to understand and the knowledge to understand. But Freddie, thank you for sharing all of that. And I lost my dad when I was a senior in high school to cancer. And so I can relate. And 35 years later, it still hits me, not as hard as it used to, but it's still, like you said, you get to that point of like, man, I wish he was here. Mm-hmm. What kind of guidance would he give me and provide me? And it also that what you shared of the inspiration that he gave. And if those of you don't know his dad's story, like he said, is that he had a very checkered past, and it's proof that through redemption and sanctification that you can become the person that God wants you to be. And it's through those times that created his testimony, that made his testimony even more powerful. And the Bible's littered with examples like your dad of like, look at this person with the past that they have, and now they've been set right, and now they're doing work for the Lord. So I can easily accept you. And we shouldn't compare our past, but people do. So I appreciate that. So couple of things that you had talked about is setting aside pride, setting aside the idea of I'm chasing that guy versus I'm looking at my goal. What are some things that you did when you were getting started with Trials to Triumph? I know you had the movie out, then you started the podcast. What were some of the things that you did to keep your eyes pointed forward and not left and right worried about what is this podcast, what is this YouTube show doing? Like what walk us through that, because I know people struggle with finding their goal and then keeping their eye on winning.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me during this journey with Trials to Triumph, the brand, is pay attention to what God is doing. You know, and so oftentimes we'll have it set out on the things that we want out of life, and we'll miss what God has been doing this whole entire time. Like, there were things that I wanted for myself, and it's like God had something else for me. And for me, you know how sports go. I have a inspirational story, but in sports, you see it every year. There's this inspirational story on ESPN that they show when the guy's having an amazing year. And my story didn't blow up until I was out of the game like 5 years later. That never happens. Your stories blow up while you're in the thick of the game and you're playing at a high level. So for my story to blow up as a guy that was a fullback, not a position that's glorified, after I'm done playing, hadn't played in the NFL for a full season, and my story blows up years later, it's like, pay attention to what God is doing. Like, I know you want this, but God is doing this right now. You have to pay attention to what God is doing. So while I was all over the place, I had to calm down and settle and realize, like, man, God, this is where God is leading me. So I have to put aside my plan and trust God's plan over mine for my own life, and just be obedient and understand that God has me covered in everything. And with the platform, that's ultimately what I'm doing. Like, I'm not the type of person that just sits up and watches what other people are doing. Because sometimes you'll see what other people, it's human nature. You see what they're doing. Oh, it's like, man, listen, I'm just praying to God lead me throughout the journey. And while I may watch other people's things from just for inspirational purposes, my biggest prayer is, God, lead me and allow me to use this platform how you will want me to use it. I don't ever want to get caught up in the process of chasing views or doing what other people are doing, because sometimes it'll corrupt your spirit. And the reason that you got into things is no longer where you're at anymore. And I never wanted my platform to become that, because God's done far too much in my life for me to abandon him at this point. Like, God is the first priority in everything that I do. So if God is not getting the glory, then it's a waste of time. Especially now, like, we're in the media space, so a lot of it is about views. And ultimately, man, I look at this the same way I look at it when I was a young kid grinding to get to the NFL. Like, man, I may get 2 views on a video today, but I'm grinding. It may take me what take me 21 years to get to the NFL. It may take me 21 years to get my breakthrough, but I know God is with me. It may take me a year. It may take me a week. Who knows? But ultimately, I'm gonna trust God's process for my life. And it's been a unique journey, because I started the podcast last year, and the book and everything was created just to give back to athletes, and it ultimately ended up becoming something bigger than I imagined it being. Then you get the documentary out of it, and then last year I created a podcast, and the podcast was doing okay. I wasn't really thinking about numbers or anything from that nature. I was just wanted to tell stories of athletes and people that have went on to do great things, and ultimately glorify God in the process. And literally, like, in April of this year, out of nowhere, like, we did an interview with Sheriff Grady Judd, and it just blew the channel up. And now we're like, I think over 50 million views across platforms, and coming up on 18 million on YouTube. But the crazy part about it, hearing that, is that sounds good to the people when you're like, as far as marketing it to like sponsors and things of that nature. But on this side of it, like, even my producers know, man, I never did this for views. And sometimes I can kind of I know I'm hard to deal with in that aspect, because you're dealing with people in the media space. Everything is about views. And my whole mindset is like, man, God has me covered. I'm going to get, like, we're going to be successful. Like, God is not, if God led me this way, it's going to be successful. So I'm not worried about getting the views. Just ultimately make sure that God is being glorified throughout this process, and you're doing all your due diligence behind the scenes, putting out the great content, and trust Him to do the rest. Like, we've done them numbers without it boosting any post or anything. And like I said, I go back to when I was a kid. Like, a lot of people were trying to cheat the process. They had all these trainers and all this stuff. I didn't have those resources. I was a kid, grew up in the inner city. So it was just like, man, just take advantage of the resources that you have, and just trust God throughout the process, that He's going to put the right leaders in place, that He's going to put people in place that can help you get to the level that you want to get to. And that's all that I'm doing, just keeping my head down and grinding, trusting God to do the rest.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And it shows your focus. It shows the dedication that you have to the process. And a couple of things that I want to draw the audience's attention to is, one, everything you say glorified God first. That's you want to glorify Him in everything that you do. The other thing that so many of us forget that's important is you have to do the work. And you said that you glorify God and then you do the things behind the scenes that needs to be done. That way it can flourish. So you can't just say, God, take the wheel, and then take your hands off the wheel and then literally do nothing and expect something to happen. And you got to take the steps forward. You got to put the work in. Freddie, I'm curious, I love the fact that you're very obedient, you're very diligent, and I know that not every day is easy. So how do you get through those tough days? Because there's so many of us that just our natural spirit is to be envious, to be discouraged, to just you naturally wake up and just like, oh. So how do you develop that identity to where you don't allow the corruption to come in to tear you down, and then start to compare yourself with others, but then also just be negative about the day?
Yeah, I'll go back to when I was still involved trying to get back into the NFL. God used that time. He worked on me a lot. I just remember watching guys every Sunday, and a lot of people, we live in this world, everybody wants to talk about the hater and nobody wants to admit when they're the hater themselves in the conversation. So I remember watching every Sunday, and your opportunities when you're a free agent, it depends on somebody else getting cut or something. And I would just watch every Sunday. I'm like, yo, I'm better than this guy. I'm better than that guy. And every Sunday I'm up being the biggest hater you ever seen. And in my mind, I don't think that I'm a hater. Even though I was better than a lot of those guys, I'm sitting up basically like, man, they need to cut that guy and give me an opportunity, trying to take food out of his mouth so that, I can get an opportunity. And just comparing in every aspect. I know I do this, that, and while a lot of people don't look at it that way, that's what I was doing. I was hating on those guys, and just instead of just trusting God to open up a door without me having to hate or, hope that something happened to somebody else. So God used that situation he dealt with me throughout that process. And, looking back at those things, it's crazy looking back at it now, because like, dang, I can't even believe that I allowed myself to speak some of those things. And, lack of opportunity, have you hating on people that you should be reaching out to for help. People that can help you, or people that, you can get some advice from, or, just take whatever motivation, inspiration, whatever. Because while I was hating on these guys, it's like, all right, I could have been looking at it from a different perspective. Like, what has this guy done? I feel like I'm better in different areas. What has he done that allowed him to get at this level, not only for 1 year, but he's been able to sustain a career out of it? He's doing something right. While I may look at it as, well, I'm better, it's like, well, they got something that you don't. And we don't often sit back and look at things and, self-reflect. So it's like, all right, maybe in this area, he's a little bit more disciplined than you are, or whatever the case may be. Maybe you can use that and, add it to your game, not because it's never about that guy, because at the end of the day, you just want to get on the team. It's just, it exposed a lot of the issues that I had. And instead of self-reflecting, sometimes we'll project on the people. When a person gets a promotion at a job, so, all right, why them? I've been at this job for 10 years and they only been here for 2 years. Why are they getting the promotion and not me? So maybe it may be a situation where you were screwed over. And then sometimes it may just be a situation where you didn't hold up your end of the bargain. Because just because you're there for 10 years doesn't mean that you're guaranteed anything. or, entitled to anything. And that's like a backup QB in the NFL. Just because you've been this guy's backup for 15 years or whatever the case may be, if he gets hurt and they don't feel like you can lead them to a championship, they may sign somebody. So it's your job while you're in your role to show your value. And for me, during that process, God dealt with me. Got a lot of the things that, the I say evil spirited mindset and heart that I had, he got it out of me. And why you don't think at the time that you're being evil spirited, you are, because you're praying on somebody else's downfall so that you can succeed. That's really the reality of the situation. But yeah, God dealt with me, and I learned how to trust God and ultimately control what I can control. All I can control is that I was in shape at every moment, and whenever a team called me, I'd be prepared for that workout. Doesn't matter what another guy's doing on TV. It doesn't matter. Like, none of that stuff that I was worrying about at that time ever mattered. When I was coming out of high school, trying to get an offer, I wasn't sitting up waiting for hoping that somebody else got hurt so that I could get an offer to my favorite school. All I did is control what I control and make sure I balled out on Friday nights. So what allowed me to get to this point in my life where that was no longer the thing anymore? And sometimes adversity does that to us. They say adversity reveals, true character. And while I thought that I was one thing, adversity showed another. And that was God, peeling back the onion a little bit and, revealing that I still had a lot of work to do on myself. And I'm glad for everything that happened. I'm glad that I didn't get signed at the time, because there was so much work that I had to do on myself. And God allowing me to go through that process, it shaped me, molded me, matured me, for some of the things that, I'm experiencing now. And because I know for a fact that some of the things that came my way that are coming my way now, I'd have messed them up all day.
Yeah. And I really like what you said about adversity, because we learn, at least I do. So I won't say we, but it sounds like you would agree. I learn more when things don't go as planned versus if everything goes exactly like I want it to, because then you coast and you think that all of the way that you've acted, the way you've treated people is okay because everything continues to move in the direction that you want it to. I'm curious, was there a particular moment when you realized that you were hating on these guys and that just wasn't good for your soul, whether you were ever going to make it to the NFL or not? Was out of your control, but being prepared, but changing your heart. Can you remember, was there a moment that you went, oh man, I have just been not a good guy, and like you said, evil spirited towards these people when they don't even deserve it?
Yeah, I don't think I realized, I came to that realization until a few years later. Once I was no longer even thinking about football and I was on the trials of triumph wave, and all I was about at that point was just building people up. And I was just thinking back to it, like, man, I remember being that guy that was just preying on people's downfall so that I can get an opportunity. And sometimes there's a saying, sometimes you don't know that you don't know. Like, sometimes we'll be moving in things and people will be moving evil spirited, and while you're looking at them from a certain perspective, like, man, they know what they're doing. So I truly don't believe that some people know what they're doing, because all you're thinking about in your mind is the opportunity that you want, and you've gotten to the point where it's by any means necessary, and it doesn't necessarily become an attachment to the person that's in front of you. It's just you're attached to this goal or whatever you want for your life, and we get so focused on these goals that we'll push anybody out of the way. That's not a great way to live. So for me, at the time, I didn't think anything was wrong with what I was doing. I was like, man, I'm better than these guys, and they need to get them out of the way so they get me forward. But now that you fast forward to the day, it's like, that doesn't even make sense. You're praying on somebody's family to lose money. That's what you're really planning on. Their well-being. You're praying on all these different things. And words are powerful too. Like, while I'm just hoping for an opportunity for this guy to get cut, it can come in a way that I didn't even expect it. Like, this guy may blow his knee out. So you got to be careful what you're praying on people and you're speaking out of your mouth. So just looking at it from that perspective, it makes me look at things a lot differently.
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah. And I like what you said, because that's just being bold and truthful, is that if you're wishing for one thing, you've got to be very careful as we start to look at, again, like you talked about in the workforce, family members, teammates of our children. So there's so many different examples that we have to be careful of, and understanding that we're all made in his image. And one of the things that I'm learning is when you encounter situations like you did, or just difficult situations, instead of saying, why me? You change the context and say, God, what are you trying to teach me? What is it that you're trying to reveal in me? It's that prayer that David prays in Psalms, that is a scary, scary prayer, is God, reveal my heart. Reveal to me what the problem is. He will. He for sure will. And then you've got to be ready, like you have been, to embrace it, realize it, and then move forward, because there's greatness and triumph just around the corner for anybody. And so that I wanted to shift to that, unless you have anything else to add. But I want to talk about the show, because the show, I first found Freddie actually when he was interviewed on Sports Spectrum, and then I found you on Instagram, and then from there, again, we text regularly, and we follow each other on Instagram, and I've just watched the show grow. Now, I have to admit, I grew up a Gator fan, and I know that, that you bleed garnet and gold, which is, even to say those two words together is painful. But the show's amazing. It's really, really good. And when you first watch the show and you see the interviews that you have with guys that you grew up with connections that you had, they're really good conversations. And now you're starting to see things develop with bigger names. You have, just to name a few. So for my listeners out there, it's great to watch on YouTube. It's Trials to Triumph. So you can find it. I'll have the link in the bio. But to name some of we'll start with the FSU guys that you've had on there. You've had Jimbo Fisher, which that interview has just gone nuts. I know you talked about that. Mike Norville, Rashawn Green, Thomas Castellanos, DeAndre Francois. That one's a really powerful one. Again, as a Gator fan, I have to admit that there were times that I was not cheering for his success. And to hear about what he went through, it really puts a lot of things in perspective. And having a son and kids that play in sports, I now have started to realize that's somebody's kid that's over there, and I need to be respectful to them. And then we're all God's children. But to flip the script now to the UF guys, which I really enjoy all those interviews, is George Gums Jr., Ventrell Miller, Walter Clayton Jr. Now, I just want to put a caveat to everybody. This was pre-Natty that you had Walter Clayton on, and it was a really, really good interview. So I think everybody who's a Gator fan and who likes basketball, go back and watch that one, because it's really neat to see him really lay everything out of what was about to happen. And then Ahmad Black. And amongst all the other interviews that you've had, they've been fantastic. What are some of the things that you've gathered from talking to all these big names? And yeah, we'll go there, because I have a second question, but I don't want to pack too much into one question. So what are some things that you've gathered from having conversations with all these people?
Just, ultimately with everyone, the common theme is the cost to greatness, and just seeing the discipline, and you hear the similarities in their stories while also hearing the differences. And that goes back to what you asked earlier about how do you stay focused on your lane. Ahmad may talk about something that worked for him that may not work for a George Gums Jr. And, vice versa for a Rashad Green or, a Jimbo Fisher. But at the end of the day, the goal is to achieve greatness. And, that's what you find out from all these different guests, the stories and, what they've been through that allows them to have that edge over guys in their sport. And it goes back to what we talked about at the beginning of this interview. While we're going through different adversity in life, we may not understand it, but that may be the reason that you go that extra mile during workouts. That may give you that, that edge over opponents. And then you look back and now you have a testimony to help other people as they go through the same exact things. So, just understanding that. But I think when you look at all these people, man, just what they've gone on to accomplish and how they've been able to beat the odds. Like Walter Clayton Jr., you said, we did the interview before the season. I'm like, yo, why isn't this interview doing crazy? I thought it was going, because Walter Clayton Jr. went to my high school. So I already know what he can do. And when the interview came out, I was like, man, it's gonna be one of the best players in the country. And everybody's like, a lot of people were like, man, we don't even know who Walter Clayton Jr. is. I was like, all right, y'all gonna know who he is. I promise you that. And then he went on to have that crazy run and go first round in the draft. But just seeing how different people have overcome adversity and found themselves along the way, because every level is different, and you find out something new about yourself at every level. And just seeing that, like even for the Jimbo Fisher interview, he's had all this success, but now he's at a new point of his life that he's never been at before. He's without, the game that he loves. He's on the outside looking in, and he wants to get back into it. So just hearing all these different perspectives is, ultimately what I think makes it unique, and just hearing how faith has kind of guided each and every one of their journeys.
Yeah, and what's great also is while you were talking, I was thinking about what we talked earlier about and what you shared earlier about is God was setting you up for this moment through your playing career, through the relationships that you had. And so we don't know what God's doing in the moment of where it's going to go 10 years from now. The other thing that I want to bring people's attention to is how you treat people. If you would have treated people poorly and not treated people with respect and been genuine, they wouldn't have come back and been eager to be on your show. They would have been like, no, thanks, all good. But because of the relationship that you built in the moment, really has given you the platform to expand and to have these people on, because these guys, they wouldn't return my call. As great as people as they are, they don't know me. They don't know the platform that I have. My platform's not as large as yours that any of these guys would want to come on. And it's okay. I get it. But the fact that you built such a good, strong relationship with all these people to be able to get these names should be a really good reminder to the audience of treat the people in front of you with kindness, with a godly intention, because you don't know what that relationship will yield 5 years from now. And it's like we talked about earlier, you're not doing this to get something later, but treat people well, because you never know when you're going to need them or when they may need you again.
Yeah, no, and definitely. And sometimes you can treat people, the right way. You still don't, like you said, you still get the cold shoulder, from guys. Like you'll have former teammates or people that you had good connections with that treat you like you on the side of the road and you just took a shower in sewage water, and that just comes with it. And I don't take it personal. I allow God to keep my heart pure. I'm sure you go through it too. Like people you had good relationships with that may act funny on you at certain points. And it's like, man, God bless him. I'm praying for him along their path. I hope he continues to connect them with people that want the best for them, because I think that's all that ultimately happens when people switch up like that. They allow the wrong people to get into their ears and kind of distance themselves from the ones that truly want the best for them. Like I'm not the type of person that wants anything from these people. I just want to, with the platform, I try to highlight their stories. If a person has went through a lot of drama in the press or whatever the case may be, it's like, all right, you're getting killed in the media. Let's find a way to tell them, not that we're trying to put out a certain image about somebody, but there's always two sides to one story, to a story. So everybody wants to kill you in the media. Let's show the people the side that they never want to share, how you're, impacting the community in this way. Because in media, people want to just do what's viral or, hot at the time and get clicks. But it's like, we're a purposeful platform. So we know that not all of our videos are going to get go viral, because we're having real conversations. And in this media space, it's a lot of clout chasing, and that's just the reality of the situation. But I do believe that authenticity wins in the long run. So while you were saying some of these people may not reach out, connect, follow up with you when you reach out to them, continue to stay authentic, because we didn't know which video, we didn't know if it was going to go viral. My goal was, I know that God is using me to make a difference with this platform. And my mindset, my motto, if I only impact one life a day, I've done my job. So we got one view, that's job well done that day. And you just never know. Like one day you may just have a video that, and it's always the video that you don't even expect. Like from this interview, you're going to think, oh, I know this moment may do well on socials. There's going to be the moment that you may have thought was the most boring part of the conversation that just does well. That's just how it works. But I think that's how God, keeps us, you know, keeps us grounded. I truly believe, because at a certain point in this space, when you're in the media, you'll start chasing that high. Once you've gotten the views on something, you continue chasing that high, and you're like, oh man, you start to feel like I know what I'm doing, or you get to a certain point, and the one that you think is going to go viral, it doesn't, and then God allows a different one to go viral. You're like, okay, I really don't know what I'm doing. And that's the reality of this social media thing. Most people, they're selling all these courses and stuff. And the reality is nobody truly knows. Nobody truly knows. So just continue to put authentic content out there. I know it's a world that's pushing embarrass people for content, troll people for content. But that's not what we build. And I feel like all that stuff dies out at some point. And you really got to be a person that brings value to the table. Because once all that fluff is out the way, it's like running trick plays in football. You got to line up and you got to play football. You got to beat the man in front of you. I look at it the same way in this media space. You can do all this trolling and stuff, but if you don't bring any content that's valuable, that's actually helping people grow, eventually they're going to move on to something that's helping them, adding value to their lives. So that's where I'm at with it.
Yeah. And usually for me, to piggyback off of what you shared, the one person that I end up impacting is me. It's having these conversations that without this platform, we most likely, one, we would have never met. Two, we would have never had a conversation like this. It probably would have been top of the line. How are things going? How's the weather? How's the family? Just real basic stuff. But most people don't have in-depth conversations like this to get to know one another even better. So for me, it's having these conversations as the person that I impact is me, and hopefully the other person. The other thing I started thinking about is, most of my episodes probably only have 20 to 30 downloads. I have one that's probably close to 500. But if you told me 20 people wanted to hear what I had to say on a weekly basis, I'd be like, what 20 people are those? Thinking that 20 is a big number. But because we fall into this comparison game, it's, well, I only have 20. Well, like you said just a second ago, I'm impacting, and you are impacting 20, 50, 100, thousands, 50 million people on a regular basis. It's like, that's, to me, just awesome to be able to do that. So before we get too far, I want to make sure that you're able to share with the audience what your intentions of the future for Trials to Triumph, and what people can expect when they tune in.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Yeah, I want to get it piggyback off what you said though before I get into it. Like you said, 20 downloads a week. And to most people that may sound small. Even one download may sound small. But what if I told you it was 1 billionaire listening to your podcast every week? Then now your perspective changes. And you just never know. And not that you're going into it with the intentions of, you're going out there and you're trying to live out, live out a gift, walking a gift that you have, but you just never know. It can be, all it takes is one share, one download to change your life, because you never know who it's coming from. And like the video that went viral for me, man, one share can turn into two, and next thing you know, you got 100,000 shares. So just ultimately continue to put yourself out there and trust that God is going to continue to enlarge your territory. If you're allowing God to lead you in every step, God's not going to allow you to lose, because He gets the glory out of everything that we do when we put Him first. And that's just ultimately what it's about. But yeah, as far as the platform, man, it's just, when I originally started the platform, kind of was just a piggyback off of what I did before, like with a documentary. With the documentary, you see so many stories in the documentary. A lot of people ask me with the documentary why I didn't just tell my story. It would have been a lot shorter documentary. But I wanted to mix in, different stories of people that have overcome adversity, from Amari's Bernard, that's probably the goat of the soap opera world, to Tony Gass, who's a Delvin Bro, those guys that went on to be highly successful in their fields. And then you got your everyday people. And for me as a believer, I know God's not a respecter of person. And I've never been into that thing where, in the world, we're in a lot of celebrity worship today. So I could have easily loaded the documentary up with all the biggest people that I know, and it probably would have did a lot more numbers. But I wanted God to be seen throughout that project, and that's the real win for me. And I'm not going to tell a person, because the foundation of our world is that the everyday people that these people on platforms seem to overlook every day, and that's what I wanted to. I want to use the platform while we're bringing on bigger and bigger guests. It may take a huge guest like a Jimbo Fisher or a Sheriff Grady Judd to be able to tell the story of somebody I know that lived right down the street from me that has impacted the community that may have gotten overlooked before, but because my platform has grown, I can tell that story, because those are really the stories that I care about. And those are the people that are actually making an impact on this country. So, for me, that's what it's ultimately about, telling inspirational stories of people from all walks of life, understanding that I may have to use the bigger people to get attention on the smaller people. But, that's what the ultimate goal is. And I truly want to use it, because like I said, we're in a world where everything's about celebrity worship, especially on social media. Everybody's watching. You see a person, celebrity worship, material worship, all these different type of things, and just using a platform to. I told you earlier about the self-reflection that I had to do with myself, and God had to peel some things back, and using the platform to allow people to self-reflect as well. It's like, okay, give you a different perspective of success. Because success for most people on social media is you have to have 100 million followers. You got to have on the gold chain. You got to have on the what's the bags that the women, well, Louis Vuitton. Let's go with Louis Vuitton. I forgot the other one. Birkin bag. That's the Birkin bag. You got to have all these luxury cars. That's what the status quo on social media is now. But having your health in check, taking care of your health, making sure that God is the center of your life. Are you actually a good person? Like that's what success. That's what true success is. When you leave the room and your kids go talk about you to other kids, are they smiling from ear to ear, or does it drain their spirit every single time you walk into the room? Like that's what true success is about. Are you impacting every single life that you come across? I don't care how much money you got. I don't care how much jewelry, how many cars, because we can't take any of that with you. And I don't know if y'all ever been to a funeral. Nobody talks about that when you go to a funeral. They don't talk about what you were driving. They talk about the lives you impacted. So that's really ultimately what it's all about at the end of the day. And I ultimately want to use the platform to reiterate that to people, because I think we lost a sense of that, with all that's being presented in front of our face today.
Yeah, and it's such a great work that you're doing, because like you said, it highlights positivity through the struggle. It's the everybody talks about Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, but they forget to read verse 12, which is, at my lowest, I know I can get through it. God was with me. I've lived without, and God's still with me. And that's what's great about the platform, is it just shows, like you said earlier, just every different stage of different people, of success, of notoriety, of status. And then you just have the people that are just doing their thing every day, trying to provide for their family, provide for their community, and follow God's call for their life. And you're a perfect example of that. And I like that you use your platform to share what God's doing in your life, how you focus on him on a daily basis. You share so many positive messages. So I want to say thank you. I get to see that. Plus, if you want to follow Freddie, you should, because he puts pictures of his daughter up, and she's got the best smile I think I've ever seen. It's the best. You could just see how wonderful of a soul that she is.
Yeah, no, I definitely, I definitely appreciate that. But yeah, man, this just thinking back on things, man, since we've been able to, to connect, man. If everything shut down today and I didn't gain another follower, if I didn't gain another view, as long as I got God at the center of my life, I won. And that's just, me going through what I went through in life, coming from the environment that I come from. A lot of people, they think where I come from, once you get God, you soft. The most gangster thing you can do is give your life to God and start living for him. And you know, a lot of people have seen me at my lowest moments before I found Christ. But you see me now, you wouldn't know a difference whether I'm doing well or if I've had a bad day. Because regardless of what took place, I won. Like a lot of people, when they saw after my pops passed, of course I'm going through it. You know, it's every day we're pushing through it, but I'm smiling from ear to ear because I'm like, man, I got to see my pops. I know I don't have a worry about, where he went after everything ended because I know he had God at the center of his life. So for me, I got to see that and I'm at peace. He got to live out his life to the fullest. And what God gave him in life, that's what I want. The peace that he had. I don't know if you remember like when we would grow up, we all had like a grandparent or an elder we knew, maybe it was a friend, whatever the case may be. We'd always see an older person that may have been struggling, and they were always so happy. You were like, I don't understand why are they so happy? And then you go talk to them, like God got me, baby. They like as long as they knew that they had God in their life, nothing else mattered, and they could be struggling, clothes ripped up, and that's the type of peace that I want. That's the type of peace that I want, no matter if I'm struggling to pay my bills this month. No matter if my business isn't going where I wanted to go, as long as I got God in my life, I won. And
Yeah.
that's the true peace.
That's joy. It's
Mm-hmm.
joy. I can think of so many people that, like you said, tattered, sometimes no shoes, but singing, big smile on their face, and life was great. We had a family friend. She just passed away. I think she was 108, something like that. I mean, she was way up there. But like you said earlier, is she had such a wonderful outlook on life, is that anybody that came across, she wants them in the kitchen, sitting at the table. She's making something for them. Um, and she took care of herself. I mean, here she is. I remember at the time she was probably 80 and she's doing push-ups in the house. And if she was a trip, but she loved life because she knew where her life was. She knew that in the center that she had overcome because she had Christ in her life. She was focused. She knew the outcome, like you said earlier. And it's just a wonderful way to be. And I want the audience to understand is it's a decision. She decided every day. You decide every day. Your pops decided every day to get up to give God the glory. And that's what changes your personality. That's what changes your outlook is it's thoughts versus thinking. You have to think that you know of what you're doing. And over time, your thoughts start to change. So it's a skill that you have to develop because then every day gets a little easier. It's not as, okay, I have to be really focused to say, I'm going to have joy today. Because over time, you just wake up and you have joy in your life. And it's amazing.
No, I want to go into that. I know we talked about my dad earlier. Just once you said that, I don't know, it just struck something in me to talk about it because I know there's somebody out here right now that may be dealing with some adversity, whether it's rejection or whatever the case may be. We talked about my father's background, and he was called at an early age to preach, but he fought it, living a life in the streets, and ultimately he came home once he was released from prison. But I remember when he took over his church, and they were trying to get a new church built, and it was an area with a lot of like racial tension, and they wouldn't allow them to get the land. So my father kept praying on it. He ultimately, God told him like, man, this is gonna happen. He would speak to God. God would tell him that it's gonna happen, and he just trusted God. And these people had denied people that land for over 20 years. And he continued to trust God throughout the process. And he was able to get the land, and they got the church. They got the church built on the land. And it was crazy because the guy was like, I don't know what's making me do this in this moment. He's like, but I'm going to do it for you. They kept turning people down for 20 years because of the history in that area. But because of his faith, and he continued to trust God throughout the process, even when he continued to hear no after no, he kept trusting God, and he continued to walk in it. So for anybody that's going through rejection, adversity, God has called you to do something, but you continue to hear no. You want an opportunity. You continue to get denied that opportunity. Trust when God has called you to do something, there's no person in this world that can stop what God has on your life. But you got to be willing to continue to put your best foot forward every day. I'm not saying that nobody can stop it and go chill, because faith without works is dead. So knowing that God has called you to do something, you cannot lose. You got to continue to put your best foot forward every day. And then eventually those people aren't going to have a choice but to get out the way and let God move. And, I just wanted to say that to anybody that may be dealing with some adversity, depressed, discouraged at the moment. God's still moving for you. God's still on the throne.
Man, that's awesome. I was going to ask you if you had anything else to add as we wind the episode down, but man, I don't know if you can top anything, but you're welcome. You've got the floor if there's anything else you'd like to add.
Man, I just kind of piggyback up what I said earlier. There's nothing like, just being a good person. And, my journey, I'm a person that truly, I consider myself weird, but I realized it's a gift as I got older. I truly like to see people win. Even if I don't know them, I just like to see people win. It blessed me. And if I know them, I feel even better. So, for me, in this journey, man, connecting with people like yourself and continuing, to watch your growth. And if God, as God continues to enlarge my territory, I believe, now, while God, now that God knows he can trust me, because if he had gave it to me 3-4 years ago before, I would have messed it up, and he definitely couldn't trust me. Like, God, if I'm the one that you called to do this, I know my heart. Allow me to, put people that I know have the same heart as me in position, or connect them with like-minded people that can help them, to get to where they're trying to go, where you called them to go. So for me, that's why I said for you, man, you're a person, I know you're wired the same way. Continue to walk in that gift, and God's going to continue to connect you, with like-minded people, so that we can all build this thing together, man. Collaboration over competition here, because we're all in this thing trying to build up the kingdom. And that's what I'm all about, man. I'm a person, man. If God continues to enlarge this thing, I like to give. My family, they'll be straight regardless. I have policies in place to make sure my kids are good. But if they gave me $100 million a day, I'd be thinking about how I'd be able to give it back in the community or whatever. That's just how I move. Like, that's what, gives me peace. I feel like we were put here to, God put us here to glorify him, and serve people. So that's ultimately what I'm doing every single day. But just to, get back into it, man, I appreciate people like yourself. Oh man, for anybody that's going to listen to this, don't ever make anybody allow you to feel like there's something wrong with being a good person, treating people the right way. Because now we talked about social media and the agendas that are being pushed. Now they're pushing a message that you have to cut people off at when they're not treating you the right way, or just kind of be a cold-hearted individual. That's what social media, I see a lot being promoted on social media, and I just won't subscribe to that message. Like, no matter how wrong somebody's done me or my family, it's like, I'm sad for them more than anything, because you don't get to experience that peace that I get to experience when you run into good people. So never change who you are. Just maybe you may have to limit people's access to you, but never allow it to turn you into an evil-spirited person.
That is a wonderful message. And I hope that everybody, if you need to rewind it, play it again, even if it's just that last 30 seconds that Freddie shared. It's so important to not let other people impact you and impact your spirit. So, Freddie, man, I really appreciate you coming on again. I'm glad I just, to your point, is I just let the Holy Spirit lead this conversation, and it's way better than any formulated questions I could have ever written down. I'm rooting for you. I know that you're going to be successful, primarily because of where you have your focus, and that's giving God the glory. And he'll take it from there. He'll take you right where he wants you. And I know that you appreciate that, and you're putting in the work. So I'm grateful for this conversation today.
Likewise, man. Continue doing what you're doing. And yeah, if you post these on social media, I don't post much on my main page anymore. I post mainly on the pod page, so my main page is wide open for posts. If you want to collab on, I'll collab on anything you want me to collab on. So just shoot me a text, and I'll make sure to accept the collaborations, because ultimately, the momentum that I got, I want you to, continue to grow throughout this process as well, man. Like I said, I want to see you win. So you gotten to watch us. My platform has grown, and my prayers that God continues to enlarge your territory. So next year when we do this, or we're doing this thing. You're like, man, pathways to greatness. You're doing crazy numbers right now. You know, that's my prayer. You know, so yeah, man.
That's awesome. Well, hang tight real quick, but ladies and gentlemen, Freddie Stevenson.